All right, we're going to go ahead and take notes for ecology using this slideshow right here. That's on your Google document slide number 4, I believe. You also should have a link up here where it says ecology vocab. This is the ecology vocab note document, and this is the interactions of living things ecology document. So you should have these two documents open. This is one you cannot edit. This is one that is actually yours, and it should have your name up here because the computer made it say your name. It's in Google Classroom probably. So make sure that you got that link there. So let's go here. You're going to be taking notes. If you remember back here, we took notes where these are kind of like the street definitions. This is just something to help you understand, like eat dead stuff. That's not a very good scientific term or explanation. But it's just kind of what I wanted y'all to, if you didn't know what scavenger was, that's what I wanted you to remember. Today, we're going to be taking more scientific notes. It's not going to be super complicated, but it's just more accurate. So let's look at it. Interactions of living things. Ecology is the study of those interactions, the study of the interactions between living things and their environment. So ecology is a study of, you could say, the study of biotic things and how they interact with other biotic things and their environment. So for an example, you could say, if you're a person that studied birds, how do birds interact with each other? How do they communicate with each other back and forth with their species and maybe another species? And how do they interact with the temperature of their environment, with the sun, the amount of sun, like in winter versus summer? How do they interact with where do they get their water source? What is their water source? What is their food source? So how do organisms interact with other organisms and with their environment? So biotic with other biotic things and abiotic things. We spent a good bit of time talking about biotic and abiotic already. We're not going to go into very much detail. But remember, biotic things are everything that's in the 6 kingdoms, all living things: animals, plants, fungi, protists, eubacteria, and archaebacteria. And then abiotic things are things, there's a bunch of abiotic things, but things like temperature, air, water, soil, sunlight. All of those are non-living or abiotic organisms or factors. We've also spent a good bit of time recently going over these, but let's just kind of recap. Last semester, we talked about genetics and cells and stuff like that, and individual organisms was the biggest thing we talked about. This semester, individual organisms are the smallest thing we're going to talk about. We'll mention genetics every once in a while and cells, but in general, an organism is the smallest unit we're going to be talking about. So a group of the same individuals of the same species is called a population. So all the alligators in an area, all the Cryptosporidium, a type of bacteria in an area, all of the sequoia or oak trees, whatever, all of those in one area is called the population. So you count up how many there are, that's the population. The community, and let me clarification, when you're taking these definitions, I realize that you can just highlight this and Control C, and then Control V it over to your document. That's not what this is. That's not why I give you access to the document. What you should be doing, if you want to do split screen, then you can, but what you should be doing is reading this definition, understanding the definition, and then going to your document and writing that definition down. Not word for word, in your own words. I write kind of lengthy definitions sometimes, and you can shorten those. Or maybe a shortened version that I write doesn't make sense to you in that form. You write it in your own words. That makes more sense. Excuse me. So if you take all the populations of trees and grasses and birds and mammals and reptiles and all the bacteria, all the fungi, all the living things in an area, all the different populations make up the community. So that's all the biotic factors, all of the biotic factors. And then if you go zoom out even further, you get all the biotic factors of the community plus all the abiotic factors. That gives you the ecosystem. And so ecology is the study of the ecosystem and how things in the ecosystem interact. You can't really study an organism without studying how it interacts with its ecosystem. You can't study an organism without understanding, a general idea of how it interacts with the bacteria in its gut, or how the sun rises and falls in a certain area, or the temperature that's in that area, or what things eat it, or what things eat it. That's the ecosystem. So the study of the ecosystem is ecology. Eco. And again, we've talked about these. I think you guys have a pretty good understanding of these. Here's an example. If I were to ask you on the test, what's wrong with this picture? This picture shows an organism. This picture, what's wrong with this picture? You could mention that there's water, that there's sand, and those are abiotic things, not even living thing. Or you could mention that there's a cattail here. And in this picture, it's supposed to be showing one organism, but it's showing multiple organisms and abiotic factors. Zoom out even more, see the population. I can ask you the same question. What's wrong with this picture? Why did the people that put this on here, how did they make a mistake? They put grasses in this picture and cattails in this picture, and some other grass and water and sand and air. This picture seems to show a bunch of different stuff, but it should just be focusing on just the alligators. And the community, same thing, just like we talked about, zooms further and further out. All right, let's talk about how these organisms get their energy. How do they get their energy? There's three main categories: producers, decomposers, and consumers. And then in consumers, we have different kind of subcategories. Let's talk about producers. Producers, we normally think of these as plants, but there are non-plant producers. Things like bacteria can be producers, or different types of protists can be producers. But producers carry out the process of photosynthesis, and they make their own food. Just like with most things science, there are some exceptions. Some things don't go through photosynthesis, but for the most part, photosynthesis is how all producers get their energy. Decomposers. Decomposers break down the remains of other organisms. So a decomposer is going to have access to some dead organism that's already been broken down for the most part, or is not a fresh death, and it's going to continue breaking those down. We think of decomposers and scavengers very similarly. Scavengers typically take things that are pretty large. Think about like a dead deer, and they're going to break it down into smaller things. And decomposers take those smaller things and break them down to a molecular level. Now we have decomposers in our gut, things that when we die, if our immune system shuts off because it's we're dead, then the decomposers will actually start breaking down things with our immune system. Like as soon as we die, decomposers in our body will break things down. That's why if you've ever seen like a dead animal on the side of the road, a lot of times they're inflated. If it's it's not been super long since they died, but it has been a couple hours, then their body will actually start to inflate like a balloon, because the decomposers on the inside are breaking things down and they're giving off gases. Think about that as passing gas, then the organism is actually inflating from the inside. And then the last thing, consumers. Consumers are things that eat other organisms. These ones make their own food. These ones break down dead stuff. And consumers they have to eat other organisms. They have to steal food from steal energy from others. And there's four main types. There's a bunch of other types. The four main types. Herbivore eats producers. Mainly, we think of that as plants. A carnivore eats animals, or you could say consumers. We normally think of animals. Remember, animals includes things like bugs that we don't consider having like meat, but carnivore is a meat eater. And omnivore eats both. They eat plants and animals. They eat producers and other consumers. And then a scavenger, like we talked about already, eats the bodies of dead animals or dead plants. So here's a quick review. See if you can answer some of these questions. All the abiotic and biotic factors in a given area are known as, that would be ecosystem. Organisms that only eat animals are carnivores. Study of interactions between organisms and their environment is ecology. And this something that eats plants and animals is omnivore.